Thanks very much, and hi everyone. I get that you're having to take in an awful lot today, so I'm going to try and keep my remarks short and simple, but with a warning, which is I'm going to provide you with a lot of questions, but I don't think I'm actually going to give you much in the way of answers to them. But it does seem to me that if we split the idea of democracy up into its component bits, it's a really useful way to help us decide what we'd like our democracy to look like. And I've been asked to talk about five statements, and they are that everyone is treated equally, that people's rights to express their views are protected, that those who hold power, who holds power is decided by free and fair elections, that people are willing to listen to and respect other points of view and to respect election results even when they lose, and finally, people in public life are honest and trustworthy. And to be honest, I think I've got the easiest job out of the three speakers and the one that's most directly connected to the heart of the debate about what democracy is and what it should be. Three of the statements highlighted on your screen are about the treatment of people. The idea that people should be treated equally, the idea that people's rights and freedom of speech should be protected, and finally that this equality of people is reflected in elections where everyone gets an equal say. Now, just to show off and to drop in a bit of Greek, these are all therefore issues concerned with what the Greeks call the demos, how the people is defined and defended in a democracy. And the other two statements relate directly not to people but to power. The idea that power should be wielded in an honest way and with integrity, and that those wielding it are willing to concede that power if the people say they should. And the Greek word for power is kratos. So there you have it, demos and kratos, the two elements of the word democracy, people and power. So in essence, I've been asked to talk about what democracy is. And in the time that's left, after showing off my knowledge of Greek, I'm going to try and talk through each of these statements. And as I go over each, I'm going to try and illustrate the fact that these principles, even though they appear self-evident, are probably not as self-evident nor as neat or simple as they might at first appear. So take the first idea, the idea that everyone should be treated equally. Now, on the surface, that sounds pretty obvious, but think about that word, everyone. Is a 16-year-old who's still at school part of everyone? Interestingly enough, in Scotland and Wales for their politics, the answer is yes. In England, it's no. In the 2014 Scottish referendum, the answer was yes. In the 2016 European referendum, the answer was no. What is the correct way to define who the people are? Equally, if you have someone who's in prison for a serious crime, do they count as part of this demos? UK law says no, but in some countries, the answer is yes. And finally, last but not least, there's money. Does a billionaire who donates to a political party or can afford to pay to have dinner with a minister in effect have the same democratic power as a working class kid from a council estate who really has no idea which party is which? Can we talk about democratic equality without talking about money? And what does democratic equality mean in a world of economic inequality? Second up is the claim that we should all have the right to speak our mind. A recent poll showed that 50% of people in the UK think that this right is under threat. But what right should we have to speak our mind? So imagine someone shouting from a street corner that people with a certain skin colour shouldn't be treated equally. Do they have the right to say that? Is their right to say it more important than the right to equality of those to whom the speaker would deny it? Well, what if our speaker is broadcasting their view on Facebook or on the telly or at a political rally? Should they still have the right to speak their mind? And finally, of course, what if it's a politician saying it? Saying, for instance, some people should be denied a vote because of their skin colour or their sexual orientation or the football team they support. I'm a big fan of denying the vote to supporters of certain football teams, but we'll leave that for now. The serious question here is whether there are views that we as citizens should be protected against, even if to do so we have to curtail the right to free speech. The third statement is the idea that elections are free and fair. And on the surface, this seems quite central to democracy. But what is a fair election? Barack Obama once said that there's no such thing as a vote that doesn't matter. But is that really true? In the 2015 election, every vote for UKIP was about 100 times less powerful than one for the Tories. The Tories got 11.3 million votes and over 300 seats. UKIP got 3.9 million votes and 1 seat. To put it another way, it took UKIP about 112 times the number of votes to get a seat. Or think about individual constituencies. If you live in a safe seat where everyone knows who's going to win, does your vote count as much as if you lived in a marginal seat where no one knows who's going to win? And is all of this fair? Do some votes actually count for more than others? And what, if anything, can we do about it? Of course, if you go back to 2016, everyone's vote did have equal weight and Nigel Farage won. But even there were arguments about fairness, about the quality of the campaign, about whether lies were used, about whether referendums are a good way of making decisions, about whether ultimately a popular referendum or the say of Parliament should take precedence. Which brings me to the next statement. People should be willing to listen and respect the other points of view and respect election results even when they lose. But what does this mean in practice? How does it sit with the idea that people are able to speak their mind and say exactly what they think? Surely part of respect the results of what we political scientists call losers' consent for the outcome of votes involves deciding we're going to make sure we win next time. And more practically, how do you stop a load of Remainers banging on about Brexit after losing the referendum? And is losers' consent harder to give for a one-off vote with long-term consequences than in an election when you know you're not going to get another vote in 4 or 5 years' time? Now, it might be that perhaps all of these contradictions can be sorted out if we could trust the folk in charge. If, in other words, the people in public life were seen as being honest and trustworthy. Do we think politicians are more untrustworthy than ordinary people? Does the fact they're interested in politics itself speak to aspects of their character we may not like? Personally, I don't think that's the case, but it's a debate that's as old as time. So let me finish where I started, with the Greeks. The famous Greek political philosopher Plato said that politicians were uniquely unsuited to being in charge. Why? Because they spend their time trying to win power. And so honesty and trustworthiness are almost by definition a lesser priority for them. But Plato's solution was that the philosopher should be in charge. So my final word to you would be careful what you wish for. Thank you.